So let's start out by introducing ourselves. If we could start on this side, please.
Certainly. Good evening. My name is Joanne Cannon. I'm the superintendent of schools here in the Addison Northwest Supervisory Union.
I'm Stephanie Taylor. I'm the principal at Vergennes Union High School.
I'm Jay Stutzel, the assistant principal.
Jeffrey Glassberg, I represent Waltham.
George Gardner, I represent Ferrisburg.
Chris Guzino, I represent Vergennes.
Kurt Haggis, I work for George.
I'm speechless. Neil Cameron, Vergennes.
Tia Hunt, student rep to the board.
Lori Martin, administrative assistant to the superintendent.
All right. So we'll just get started here. Okay, for the agenda today, I don't have it in front of me.
Oh, you need it here.
Yeah, do you have it?
Yes.
So we'll start out with public communication. I didn't see any, but still hopeful. Anybody back there want to be public? No? Okay. It's probably because of the weather, I would think. So that brings us right to Lynn.
Good. Yes. Good evening, everyone. For the board, most of you know me. I'm going to
Do you want me to
move
email
a
it back
little
to you or
bit
something?
over
No, you
here,
did.
I think, just right here, if I could.
Yep.
That way I'm not my back to the camera all night. My name's Lynn Call. I'm the director and superintendent of the Hannaford Career Center down in Middlebury, where you send many students. We also have two programs embedded at Vergennes Union High School, an ag program and an engineering program, both of which we're very proud of. I'm going to kind of launch into the PowerPoint. This was designed by our business manager, Mark Bouvier. He presented at Mount Abe last Tuesday night, about a week ago. And so this one is the new and approved for Vergennes. So kind of what I'm going to talk about a little bit, the priority of what I'm talking about is our budget and tuitions and all of those really great things, but we've thrown in some pictures of what we actually do. And what we actually do is train young people for careers, and we do some workforce development, quite a bit actually, for adults. We serve, in terms of number head counts, we serve more adults per year than we do high school students. Very few people know that. And we are the center for workforce development for Addison County. So this is a photo of us, our heavy equipment operating program. It's a high school program. We do offer that to adults too, and it's attached to our forestry and natural resources. So let's jump right into the budget. Our budget this year is $3,496,478. That's an increase over the present year budget of about $76,565, or a 2.24% increase. You might recognize this young lady. She is a junior, I believe, at Vergennes Union High School and is in our medical careers program. This is a 7-year budget history of the Career Center. As you can see, we have been relatively conservative about budget increases. In fact, I ran that today, and if you average those out over the 7-year period of time, we've averaged about 1.3 or 1.30% increase per year. And this year is a relatively average kind of increase, if it's above the average, because we've had a couple years where we went below. I want to point out, no, I won't at this point, but the 2014-2015 year, there's some unique kinds of things about tuition when we get to that. We are funded by a 6-semester average. It's a little bit different than your equalized pupil at the high schools. So we look at 6 semesters or 3 years. That's a rolling average. The last average that goes into our budget every year is our fall enrollment. So our fall enrollment of 2014 came in, and the spring enrollment from 3 years ago went off. This is the pictures that you see there as a project. We have a sustainable farm on campus, and we are building that barn. It's about half done at this point, at this juncture. These are the 6-semester averages that we used for this year's budget. This slide is a little bit confusing, so I'll take a little time here. First of all, if you look here, these are the 3 high schools and other. The first column is our fall enrollments. So that was that last semester I was talking about. And by the way, that's one of our larger ones for the last 6 semesters. We've been falling off our enrollments. I'll have a slide later that shows that. These are the highest enrollments in each of those categories in that 6 semesters. And it's not necessarily this semester or last semester, but the highest, the fall semester, Vergennes had 36.67% full-time equivalent students. Their highest, your highest during that 6 years or 6 semester average was 38 full-time equivalent students. Your lowest was 32. So, I mean, you're averaging about where your 6 semester average is, which is 35.39. This figure here is very important to remember because this is our multiplier as we are as we get into how we come up with what we're billing and those kinds of things. These are the multipliers that we will be using to multiply for Vergennes' totals. These are our total budget figures. That's what we use. Yes.
You mentioned you had significant adult enrollment. Does that occur during the day? Is it only in the evening?
We have 2 categories of adults. There are adults without diplomas, which figure into our averages just like a normal high school student. And then we have adults with diplomas who pay tuition. So they're not figured into these totals. Adults without diplomas are. Adults
So
with...
are they the other?
No, what the other is schools. So we have a few kids from Otter Valley, CVU, homeschool kids. That's what other is. The adults, if they don't have a diploma, they would be attached to whatever high school they would be attending, and that high school pays for that. If they do have a diploma, then they pay tuition. Second part of your question was, is that evening classes or daytime classes? We have a few adults in daytime classes. I think last semester we had 5. Most of our adults are in evening classes.
Thank you.
Lynn,
Yes.
could you just explain the full-time equivalent? So, because most of our students go either in the morning or in the afternoon.
Right.
So
Most
two
of your
students
students
combined?
who are coming down to the center would figure, because they would figure as a 0.5 because they're half the day,
That was my
basically.
question. Thank you.
220 minutes is 120 minutes would be a half-time student, 240 minutes would be a full-time student. And that doesn't really figure to the total time that they're in, and I'll get to that in
Yeah.
just a minute. Other questions? So this slide is a little bit busy and a little bit hard to see. What this really does, these are those totals again, and here's your 6 semester average for this time. These are the semesters that we're using. So we're using spring semester of 2011, 2011-12, so it'd be spring of 2012. And the last one that went on is October of 14. And this is what your total is. But as you can see, you're pretty consistent across here. The highest you had was this first semester of 2012. Your lowest in that 6th semester was this one, which was fall semester of 13 last year. These are the towns that represent the students, where those students are coming from. We have a lot of students from Ferrisburg. Proportionately, we have a lot of students from Addison. If you think of Little Addison School and the number of students in each of their classes, that's a pretty big percentage compared to Vergennes Elementary School, for example. So those figures, you kind of have to think about what the size of those schools that they're coming from. Panton and Waltham don't have elementary schools, so that's a little harder for us to judge. So this is our budget, that let's call it 1.5 million for the sake of argument. 3.5 million, thank you.
It's only a couple of minutes.
Yeah, it's only a couple million, you know. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna subtract off some grants, some entitlement grants we have, Carl Perkins. We have, the state reimburses us for salaries for my salary. At 50% of that, they reimburse for our special ed teacher, our guidance coordinator. Some of the positions that are mandated by the state that we have, those are reimbursed, and that comes into this total figure, which is $278,000. We subtract that off. We have the state base payment, which is this one right here, and that's actually 87% of the state base payment. Remember I was telling you, we have them for 4 hours. Where are they the rest of the time? They're here. And so a few years ago, about 10 years ago to be exact, the state said, okay, we're going to pay this directly to the tech center on behalf of the state, but we're going to let the high school keep 13% because they're, they're here, they're playing basketball, they're in the band, etc. Okay? So that's the state base payment. Again, that's multiplied by that total figure of 135 or whatever it was, I can't remember. In addition to that, we have a piece here that's tuition reduction. If a student attends a tech center, we get an extra 35% of this base amount that goes towards lowering the cost of a tech center, because on that first picture I showed you was a dozer, which is a very expensive piece of equipment. So the state has put that in there. So you subtract these three off, and this is the amount that we have to raise locally by an assessment. Again, we take this 6 semester average, which is still our multiplier. We divide this amount by that, and this is the local assessment per FTE, 12,115. And you add this one and this one. You don't add the tuition reduction, but you add this one, and this becomes the announced tuition for the tech center, 20,244. Okay? If you multiply that by that, you should come up with that. No, you should come up with you should come up with that. Okay? Questions? It's a little confusing, but that's how tech ed's paid for. Okay, keep going?
So, no, I'm not
Okay.
following it. So
I was saying confusion.
136 students times 20,000 would be $2.7 million. So is it?
Okay, you have 2.7 million, then you add this and that to it, because this is your tuition reduction, which is not figured into here, and these are those state entitlement grants, state and federal entitlement grants that I was talking about.
So that comes out to 2 million even, plus or minus.
These two?
Well, if you add those two together, plus the 2.7 million Jeff just referenced, then
Yeah.
you get $2 million or so.
I-
Alternately, how do we, there's a value in our budget, which is what we're sending to the tech center. So how do we come up with that number from what
Yeah.
we're seeing?
It must be the $12,000. 136 times 12,000 is going to be about the 1.6. I assume that's
Yes.
the combination, not the 20,000.
This should be coming straight to us from the state, so that should not be included in your budget. I mean, I argue that none of it should be because, I mean, it's not a double assessment. The voters are already voting on our budget. But that being said, it has to be collected and transferred somewhere. So it comes in, and so your local assessment would be this times that 30, whatever it was back on the original.
But I don't get that either.
36,
Yeah, it's the 12,000
Times.
136.
yeah.
Okay?
So our portion of that 136 is what our
It's
portion is.
36 over 136, but the numbers don't
Well,
work out.
Yeah, that, yes, it does. It works out. If you multiply out the
35.39 times this figure
12,000.
is your local, that's your local
okay.
assessment, right?
Yep,
If you multiply, Neil, if you multiply the 20,244 times the 136.61, and then you add in the 452,270 and the 278,679, it comes out to 3,496,481.84,
Right.
which is in essence what they've got up there on the top.
Right. Okay?
There's a little math mangle in there, but yeah.
If this is coming straight from the state, that should not be in your budget. This is coming straight
Okay,
from
I
the
see.
state, that should not be in your budget. And this is coming straight from the state, should not be in your budget.
yeah.
So all should be in your budget is this times your.
35.39.
Correct. Okay?
Yep.
All right. This is another one of your students. And now we're gonna do some comparisons to prior years. So this goes back to, well, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And you can see that we've, this is our what this is a picture of our 6 semester averages, the amount that we were using as our multiplier for the last 8 years. And you can see that this is really important because that's the lowest number that we've had in those 8 years. And that's gonna be very telling in the next couple slides that I have. And that's down, each one of these is compared to the previous year. So we lost, if we go back to here, we lost from this year to this year, we lost 2.57. We lost almost 9% between that year and that year, and we lost another 4%. So that's the percentage of students that we've lost in the last 3 years, which is about 15%. Okay? And this is the tuition rates that are corresponding to that. If you look back here over the last 7 years, we were 10, then we dropped to 8, 8, 9, and then we went to 10, 4, 7, and then we went to 12, 15. That was the one I just showed you, which is a 14.7% increase. A couple things I'd like to point out, if you're looking at those same 6 years, that's an average increase of 2.46% on the tuition increase. The other thing I want to point out is this one. We took $70,000 of carryover from this year and applied it to this tuition last year. And we reduced that tuition. So that's kind of a figure that's not sustainable because we don't have that carryover year after year. But we did apply it here to lower this tuition rate, or this tuition rate would have been higher. So you're really looking at this increase over the course of 2 years. That's important. I think it's important, back here, we decreased it by 14%. So if you look at those averages over those 6 years, it's a little more palatable.
Less students over time, and you have to increase the amount that you get from each one because the facility costs the same.
I mean, we're kind of down to one program, one of one. So when we cut a teacher, we cut a program. And we've cut several programs to kind of keep us, to do that recalibration, I call it. And, you know, that's a sad time. Do we need carpenters and electricians and plumbers? Yeah, we do. But if I don't have any students enrolled in those classes, I can't have that program. The other program we've cut recently is video tech. We cut an engineering position. So we've been cutting those positions as we go, but what's really important at the tech center, we're at a point now that if we cut a position, we're really cutting programs. And we want to have a broad base of programs, and still we want to be conscious of the taxpayers that are paying for that. So, you know, when we get too low, we're going to have to get there. There's some adjustments we're going to make this year. They're like 0.5s and those kinds of things. I'm recommending that to my board on Wednesday night. They're presently in the budget, but we would like to have some flexibility. We think that number is, I think that number is going to stabilize, that 6-semester average number, based on a really high number this fall. We're not where I'd like to be this spring. I think we're about a 129, but still our average, I think, is going to balance. So I'm hoping not to cut a bunch of programs, okay? But this is explaining why those numbers are going up. Our budget, remember, is 2.5%. Okay, anything new here? This is the summary. Yeah, this is an important one. This is really an important slide. These numbers here are that state reimbursement, that stuff, that money that is flowing through directly to us. I'm forgetting the name of.
State ed grant?
Yeah, no one. I'm sorry. Yeah. So in 2009, 2010, remember that's the height of the recession. They froze that figure. The state froze that. They froze it for all of us, right? 2010, and by the way, this is supposed to, by state statute, supposed to go up by 2.5% each year. But as you can see, they froze it for 3 years. And then they brought it in and they went up. All of these, if you compare to the year before, are just under 1%. So in that same 6-semester kind of average that you're putting in there, you had a 0.65% increase average up from the state. So what, that basically, that's another thing that has been shifted to the local. Okay? If you can, those are those same kinds of years, and then,
Yeah.
okay? And I think that's kind of an important slide for folks to know. And that's kind of what I have. I should say that we are proposing to pilot a couple programs we're thinking about that are going to be new if we get enough enrollments, but we're kind of late in doing that. We would like to bring our building trades program back if we had the enrollment. We're looking at a couple programs that do have low enrollment, and we may cut back on those programs and add others if it looks like that. Building trades was one of them. The other one that we're kind of looking at is a web design program. A couple interesting things that the center's been doing. We have done a pretty intense study of 3rd and 6th graders in Vergennes. And we have found that we really need to identify young women for STEM careers, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So we're hoping to run a summer camp this summer for young women to participate in those activities. Okay, I'll leave it at that. See if you have any questions. And Mark put this in there, so there you go. Any questions that anyone has? Yes.
What do you hear from employers in Addison County in terms of their needs for recruitment, the skills they're looking for in new employees?
I think that those whole engineering and design kinds of things are pretty important to a lot of the employers. The other thing that's really important, I think, is just a background. Well, our diesel and auto programs are booming. You have some sheets, and by the way, I have a sheet, I don't have an overhead, of the most important programs to EHS students. And powered diesel technology has long been the favorite program of your students here at the high school. And those students are all getting employed, and they're all getting employed in Vermont. They're all, 10 years ago, we would have 5 students graduating from that program, and none of them went on to post-secondary. Last spring, I think we had 17, and they all went on. And most of them, 2 or 3 of them went on to full ride scholarships. So that's a really important program, and they're all coming back to Vermont, and they're all going to work. Our automotive program, you will find those students all over, but they're not necessarily doing automotive. You will find them places like Cabot, Hard Cider, the plants on Exchange Street are employing a lot of our students because they know how to problem solve, and they know how to use hydraulics and electricity to do that, which are all important pieces of what that is. Our employers are wanting more plumbers, electrician, and HVAC people. And right now, we really don't have a program to do that. So that's one of the reasons that we're looking at doing that. At the adult level, we've trained about 50 skilled butchers and meat cutters. Most of the biggest, there's 2 big plants, big relative for Vermont, Vermont Livestock and Green Pastures. Vermont Livestock is in your school district, and we work very closely with them to provide job training. So when we're at the high school level, we're really talking about career development, and at the post-secondary level, we're really talking about workforce training. So if you're looking at workforce training right now, we're looking at things like road maintenance, we're looking at butchers and meat cutters, we're looking at building maintenance folks, plant maintenance kinds of folks, that kind of thing. answer your question?
Thank you.
Thank you for asking. Anything else? I thank you for your time. Our annual meeting is the Wednesday, right after winter break. We have an open house Thursday night of this week that I would like to invite everyone down to. This is, we call it our, it's like a celebration. We have kid projects going on, we have food, we have everything. It's a great time. If you're not doing anything, if you're doing something Thursday night, change your schedule and come on in, because it's a great time. I think we're gonna start about 4, we'll go 4 to 8, and then it'll be at both campuses. For those who don't know, we think of us as 3 campuses. We think of us as being at the main campus attached to Middlebury Union High School. We have our automotive at North Campus, which is a facility we built in 2005, and then we have our Vergennes Union High School campus. So. Good enough?
That's good, yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Close out and let you get on with your meeting.
Lynn, you're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting if you'd like to.
And if
I can't tell
you
you
have
how
something
much-
else going on, well, you should cancel
You
that.
should change your plans.
I can't tell you how much I'd like to do that,
Okay.
but maybe another time.
You're welcome anytime.
I always feel welcome here, so thank you.
So I have a quick question for Joanne on this topic,
Yep.
but it's not a question for Lynn, it's a question for Joanne, and it has to do with sort of where the money is. So there's an assessment, 20,000 times 36, or whatever the exact value is. I'm not finding that in our budget,
Right,
and I don't remember that we put it in the SU budget.
right.
So is that part of an assessment that comes based on voting that budget separately?
No.
Where is it?
Oh, well, let me back up. I don't want to say no. This is where it is. And it was very new to me as well because when Tanya and I were preparing for budget season, we couldn't find a line item that said tuition for the tech center as well. Apparently what had been decided, and it's not just this board and this community, but for all of the member districts to the tech center, you have your high school budget, and then you have a number that you have for, as part of the assessment. That gets figured into the tax rate. It does not get figured into the expenditure of the high school budget.
Okay.
Thank you.
So is
Is that clear?
That's how I've always, that's how I've understood Act 130 to work.
Yes.
I'm not sure that that's how it's always worked.
Yeah. But that's how it works here. And looking at your annual report last year around the, it was not extremely clear to us, but we know that that was the intent. And if you look on the tax rate calculation, you'll be able to see that's where the assessment is.
Okay.
It's,
And so that makes sense because fundamentally, the budget that Lynn just presented to us is voted by the voters as a separate item. And so
Correct.
it's not really voted into our finances.
That is correct.
So it's, okay, all right. So we're not taking in tax money and sending it to the vote school, to the tech center. Got it.
Well, we're raising you're raising taxes from your towns.
Tax rate is.
Understood, but that's not happening through the request for voter support of the VUHS budget. It's the voter support for the Hannaford Career Center budget.
Correct.
And, yeah, okay. I know it's elementary 101, I'm sorry, but I just, every year I need
No, I
to,
think it's a really
get it straight when
confusing
asked.
issue, and I'm
Yeah.
glad Joanne has done that, because I'm not sure if we got that where it's supposed to be. That's how I believe it's supposed to be.
Neil, isn't that an amount that is sent by the town treasurers directly to the career center?
I'm not sure how that
Money
logistically
does
works.
not go from the town clerk to the career center. That money gets passed between the career center and the school district.
And
Oh, yeah.
and the reason is because that assessment is spread out over your entire high school population. Otherwise, Addison would really take a blow, if you think about that. So,
Yeah, thanks, Lynn.
Get out of here before they ask me questions.
Lynn, you're welcome to stay.
I know, Kurt, keep telling me.
There's no cookies, but you're welcome.
I have to cook dinner.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming. And I do truly miss the meetings because of the cookies.
4 o'clock,
Yeah.
Thursday night.
Oh, Richard's there, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
sorry, I thought your dog was down
No,
there. Yeah, cookies are good.
yeah. I noticed since, while we were talking, that some public have joined us, so would you like to make any comments? No?
No, I'm just a student at the school, and I'm curious as to what's going on.
Okay, great. Thanks for coming. Next up on the agenda is the student representatives.
So I'm obviously here alone today. Josh had a family event and Emily's road is not plowed, so she's a little nervous about that. So our new semester is underway. We're in our second week, in our second full week of classes. Full week, bye. And February break is next week, which has everyone very excited. But yep, everybody's just kind of getting into the new semester. The changing of classes has stopped, so everybody's just kind of getting back into the swing of things. Winter sports are starting to wrap up a little bit. The girls' senior game is this Friday, and both boys and girls will be playing Middlebury in their senior games. Right now, the girls' basketball team is 6 and 11, so they're doing pretty well comparatively to the past couple of years. And the boys' senior game is next Thursday, the 19th, which is over break, and they right now are 13 and 3, so they are also doing very well. Wrestling has a meet here tomorrow against Mount Abe and Milton, I believe. Track states are this Saturday. They are wrapping up. They were unable to go to the New England qualifier this past Sunday because of the weather that we've been having. Cheerleading states are next Saturday, and the band and chorus just attended districts the past Friday, and there were great attendance. Lots of our musicians got into that, so that was pretty great. Other than that, seniors just created a huge change with our graduation caps and gowns. As put on by Ms. Taylor, we are all, the class put it to a vote, but Ms. Taylor introduced the idea, and the class agreed that we are all going to wear blue. There will be no more female-male segregation between that, and we will all be walking alphabetically. So that was a pretty big change in tradition, which has been very much a long tradition since. Sit together too? Yeah, we'll be sitting alphabetically. Yeah. And that's been since 1959, I think we decided. So, yeah. So we've created quite a change, and I think Andy Kirkaldy is writing up an article. Me and Miss Taylor and a couple other students met with him last week, and I believe that article will be out in the Addy Indy tomorrow. Other than that, project graduation fundraising is still going on. We just ordered our second batch of scarves because we sold out from our first one, which is pretty awesome. So we have, yes, awesome, nice job. And if anybody would like to buy a scarf, they can talk to Miss Ambrose or me, and we will set you up. They're $15, and they're selling quite fast. So, and we are also doing a couple other fundraising to get ready for that. Does anybody have any questions?
Good scarves,
Yeah, they're very nice. Yeah.
Excellent.
I do have one question, if that's okay.
Of course.
I think it's mainly directed towards Ms. Canning, if that's okay. I've been hearing a lot of questions on how snow days are decided. Can you give me any information on that?
Absolutely.
Like what is the determining thing?
There is not an exact science here, to
Okay.
tell you the truth. But I did actually send out probably a 2 or 3 page explanation to the faculty and to parents. I'd be happy to share that with you.
how is it decided? You know, it's really, it's overall, the overarching lens is about safety. And we do check with, I check with the other superintendents in the region. Some of it does have to do with the decisions that they make, because we're all tied into one Hannaford's Career Center. So we try to coordinate that. I talked to the bus company. This year I took down the names and the contact information for the road crew, and I've only had one conversation with them at this point. I think what I've learned is that I want to involve them a little bit more. Not that they'd have a bearing on the final result, but it would give me more information about the quality of the roads in the area. I am not the kind of person that likes to make that call at night, to be honest with you, because things can change, as you saw today. I mean, you know, you know that snow's coming, but it can really look differently than what the forecast is. And we really have to consider what the back roads are doing. We had one time this year where a bus went off the road and just couldn't get back on easily, and I think it affected the high school. So we have to, all of those determinants go into the final decision. I like to make the decision by 5:30. I think in most cases I've done that. And then the information goes out to the broadcast system and the alert system. So it's really overarching safety. It's coordinating as much as we can, because we don't want tech center kids to be going and, you know, we cancel school here, which I kind of messed up one time with the delay. This year we're not having a delay. And really, you know, as I said, the conditions of the road. So in that document, I did lay out those different pieces. I don't, the other thing I don't like to do is to close school early, because it just throws, it's a big disruption and throws parents, especially of the younger children, throws their schedules off. So I try not to do that. And I think, and I get feedback. You know, I do call the schools and I find out, you know, did you get any complaints? What are the parents saying? Sometimes we get phone calls. So I don't just make a decision and leave it. I do test the waters and try to get feedback. Was that a good call? Not so good call? And this year, I think I feel pretty good about the calls that I've made. Did you get complaints about today?
Not really,
Okay.
no. I mean, people were complaining that it wasn't snowing, so we couldn't have a snow day, but.
Had nothing to do with me,
No,
though, right?
no. Students also, there's a website called Snow Day Calculator, and so you put in your zip code and the, like, type of your school and the amount of snow days you've already had, and it'll give you, like, a percent of how likely the next snow day is.
I never knew that.
I mean, you probably could, but yeah, it's really funny.
Thank you, Tia.
Yes.
That would be another reference check that I make.
Yeah.
Send that over, I have it right here.
Please do.
So Tia, when you put your numbers in, are you using 3, because we're down 5 days, but only 3 were for
Yeah,
snow.
I've only been using 3 snow days.
But we're down 5. So
Yeah,
I think
that's true.
You have to bump it up to 5, because those 2, we have to make up the skiing
Yeah.
days too.
Yeah. I don't.
Remember,
That's right.
We're looking at each other, right?
It's
rubbing it in, right? Or not
Yeah,
quite?
it's just like, they're not here.
Graduation July 4th.
Yeah.
Not gonna happen.
All right. Yeah. Any other questions?
No?
Right.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Do you have other activities you have to go to? Feel free to.
Cancel
when you
them
need
and
to.
hang out.
You like that, don't you?
I thought that was pretty funny.
Chowed right into that.
All right, Stephanie.
So
You're
you
up.
have my incidental report. I had submitted one in December, and then we ended up doing budget stuff, so it didn't go out. So I added on to it. Do you have any questions?
Nope. Anyone else on the board? Go ahead.
Can we talk a little bit about the status of the steam leak and how things have been put back together?
Yeah, it rocks. We've got, actually, all the rooms are ready to be inhabited. One teacher, because of where she is in a project, elected not to move yet. But 2 of the 3 classrooms are back in session there. The millwork, and by that, I mean, some of the window trim, the shelves, the cabinetry, it has not been installed. Those are, permanent fixtures. So that will be going in. I think they'll start this February break and then continue in April break. But we've got temporary tables in place, so they have what they need. The new electronics, all the computers and projectors have arrived, and are being, I think the computers are in, or ready to go in. The one classroom that's not ready needs some tables, and that's just a request that was made today. Projectors are being hung, and we're starting to order some of the other furnishings, desks and chairs, any of those that were damaged are on order or being ordered. And then we move to evaluating the classroom supplies and the books. But most of that stuff was loaded into the trailer, so we have to do an inventory, and we have to determine whether it's usable or not. So that's going to be a much longer process, because it's actually handling books and materials and soft things. So, but it was sprayed with a product that is designed to neutralize contaminants by Savage, and it's just sitting in a trailer out in the backyard right now. So it's a slow process, but I think actually getting the teachers back in the classrooms went very, very quickly. We just had a great team working on that, and the rooms look beautiful.
Does our insurer offer any loss prevention consulting? And in particular, what I'm interested in now is getting a picture of what the balance of that steam piping looks like?
We discussed that, and those conversations are ongoing with the insurer, and I think it's Hartford Boiler. So we're working on that. Tanya's been the main point of contact for that, for those people. And Bob Worley's been involved too. And they've been in the building a number of times looking at that. Right now, I don't know what the status is.
Okay. Prudence would dictate that we look at that very seriously, and that rise quickly on our list of priorities for our use of capital reserves, and that we revisit the idea of working with an energy services company to finance a heating plant changeover. Without having looked at it, but if we're talking about 1959 era pipes, there's no reason to believe that that same condition doesn't exist everywhere.
If we've had one leak, we're going to have another.
We're going to have another.
That's a given, we recognize that.
It's like putting a new water pump in your car.
Yep.
The old parts will now be in weak spots.
Yeah, there is an estimate floating around of what that costs to replace. I think I said it at the last meeting. It's $2 million or more.
Right.
And that has nothing to do with the boiler, that's just the piping for that side of the building.
And is that like a real takeoff with a proposal, or was that somebody saying?
It was given to me, and
Right.
my assumption was that work had been done prior to my arrival here, and that the board is aware of some of that assessment work.
So I'm pressing the point,
Yeah.
and it's not about you.
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
pressing the point because that needs to go from hearsay to
Right.
real work.
No,
A real proposal based on a scope of work that has a cost associated with it that we can then plan based on. So that needs to become a real priority. We were very lucky this time. We were very lucky.
So should the board request a report on where we are with a proposal or the options?
Well, I think what Jeff's harping on, and I use that fondly, you know.
I am harping.
Yeah, is that we'd like to know ahead of time what is, I know Stephanie's thinking right now, he's going to talk about the operations manual again, but in the maintenance and operations manual, there should be a section on the steam system or the piping or that system should have a usable life in it. In 1959, I believe the usable life is over. So that way we can plan our capital investment based on usable life. And so everything that's usable life is over, we'll prioritize, right?
Right.
Because if it hasn't failed, it's going to.
Right. We
So-
have, we now have a building long-term plan,
Yeah.
and I imagine we haven't been as directive with you as we should be.
Yeah.
But we have that information. We know that we're on borrowed time with the boiler.
Yeah.
And I think the question is a good one. Do we replace the boiler, or do we look at another energy-efficient system? And there are evaluations and reports and organizations that come in and do that level of assessment. To be honest with you, I think a couple of our buildings in the system could use that, and if we acted as a system and we went at this to look at where all of our schools were, we would have a better overarching plan
Yeah.
that would be of benefit to all of the schools.
It should be a tactical action
Right.
every year.
Right.
You know, this is what our capital assets are, this is what we can invest in on an annual basis. You know, and we've been in transition, so it hasn't become mechanical yet, but it should eventually become mechanical. You know, what's in our priority list for the
Right.
building? You know, because primarily an educational system has to be safe and comfortable, and that's what our building is, so.
And the reason I started with the question about loss prevention is that might be a way for us to obtain some professional assistance in the assessment of
Right.
condition
Exactly.
at no cost to the district, because our insurer has an interest in not having to pay another claim.
That,
So-
and there is a division of the Vermont Superintendent's Association that offers free consultation around energy efficiency, and so I'm going to look into that as well.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
So let's keep this on our radar screen, Kurt. We're making those future agenda items, and we'll go
Yep.
from there.
Just waiting for the right time.
Okay.
And I think as we move forward, we have a proposed budget, and, you know, as we move forward with a budget, then, you know, we can go to the budget section that has to do with maintenance and operations and look at that. Sound good?
Good.
Are you finished?
Yeah, we were at the question section.
The only other thing that I would mention is the open house.
Yeah.
I sent an email to all of you and anyone else who wants to come. You know, this Wednesday, 5 to 6:30. Of the auditorium, the kitchen, middle school gym open before the cabaret begins in the middle school gym at 6:30. So hopefully some of you guys can join us. If not, that's okay too. Stephanie and I will be here to talk with parents or any community members that are interested in seeing that.
Which means
Thank
we'll be
you.
late to the district meeting on Wednesday.
You don't have to come to the district meeting. So I think we have
You're
two dates
welcome,
for an
but
open
you
house,
Yeah,
don't
and
we?
then before the annual meeting on the 24th, we're doing the same time. This Wednesday was great, just because there's a lot going on in the school, and we thought it'd be an awesome opportunity to have people come in. And we were here anyway, so it was an easy thing to be available. And then in advance of the annual meeting on the 24th as well.
We figured that would bring lots of people to the annual meeting, have that open house ahead of time. So.
Could that be publicized? Could it go on the sign out
It's,
front?
yes,
Can that?
I asked for it to be done. It was so bitterly cold on Friday that it takes a long time to put those letters up, so it will be done this week, for
Thank
sure.
you.
Yep.
We could cloak the sign and then make the change and take the cloak off.
It is so windy out there, too.
And you have to hold the plexiglass up with your head, so another added challenge.
I have some construction equipment that you can use.
It's been
Anything
on the
else
list.
from the principals? Thank you. Over to you, Joanne.
All right. I am not going to go through the incidental report, but I do want to start with an apology, and that is around the meeting that was held this morning. It was in my incidental report. I had hoped that it would get out to the board in enough time to give you all an opportunity to attend. I apologize for that. I actually learned about it several weeks ago before I took a short leave of absence, so I think that was totally on my shoulders, and I do want to apologize. But I did want to let you know that George was there for the duration this morning and for the second meeting, and then Jeff and I met with the other Addison County superintendents and a smaller number of legislators to talk about issues that are unique to our immediate area, and I thought the conversation went well. As you might know from reading the VSBA legislative update, there is another bill that's been created that will once again look at incentives for unification. And within that bill, looking at supervisory unions over a certain number of years to become a school district. And so be looking out for more of that information as it comes out. There is a number of trainings that the Vermont School Boards Association is putting out. One is an annual requirement that school board chairs and superintendents must go through training. I asked the question, if they've gone through once and it hasn't been a full year, do they have to do it again? But the answer is yes. Annually, we should go through a training, and since we were not able to do it this week, the next one will be held on May 21st. So I will remind you as we get closer to that time. Last year, Kurt and Michelle and Jeff joined me, so I hope to rally my board chairs again for May. There looks to be a really interesting training that's coming up called Teacher Contract Negotiations, Learn the NEA Way. And I would love to attend that training with any number of you. I was going to bring this to the attention of the Supervisory Union Board specifically because that's the board that's responsible for identifying the negotiations council. But this is going to come up at each of the individual board levels. And whether you decide to be on the negotiating council or not, I think it would be helpful for any one of the board members to understand what it means to negotiate a new master agreement. And so I'm happy to choose any of these dates. I'll go anywhere in the state. There's also a new service put out by the Vermont School Boards Association, and that service will provide data to negotiations teams around demographic information in the area related to other salaries and benefits and what's happening with negotiations. And I think it might be worth our while to do, to perhaps take advantage of that. And then there are a couple of things that, Gloria, this is not the latest incidental report, so I'm just going to let people know what's on it. I updated the incidental report recently because I wanted you to know that Tanya and I had an opportunity to meet with all of the school district treasurers, and I thought that that was a really great meeting because we were able to lay out, I don't want to call it a job description, but the expectations of town treasurers as it relates to working with the business office. And I think it's suffice to say that there are more responsibilities that will be on the shoulders of the treasurers that currently do not happen, like reconciliation of our bank accounts. They were totally open to this. They asked a lot of questions. What we got from that is an establishment of better communication, as well as clear understanding of what the duties are. And any one of them are very happy to come to each of the boards on an annual basis to talk about that. So that was a really good meeting.
So should we invite the treasurer through you? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
And in fact, I think I remember the board did say something to me back in the fall that you would like to meet annually with the treasurer. And we could do that before town meeting. I don't know if after town meeting there'll be a different treasurer.
I think it would be important for the treasurer to be present at the annual meeting this year.
Yes.
They have not in the past?
Not once that I've been to.
Not one that I've been to either.
Okay.
As I may have mentioned to you previously, the treasurer, I know other folks on the table do know her. I've not met her in my 10 years of service.
That was part, and they recognize that level of communication needs to be improved as well. And one of the points that we made is at the request of the boards, they can ask you for a report. They can ask you for attending meetings. So I think to expect, and I'll tell you that not all of them submitted an annual report, a report for the annual report.
Oh, we know
And
that.
that happened last year, and I didn't understand that until recently, but there is, once again, not all of them submitted an annual report. And certainly, if you think that attending the annual the informational meeting.
It's the annual meeting and the same night we have the informational meeting, as far as the high school goes.
So.
Different
Okay.
entities handle it differently.
Differently.
Yeah.
So is it this board's request that Barbie McDonald attend both the annual and informational meeting?
At least be present at both.
Okay. Okay.
primarily because that's where she's elected annually.
Right.
One of the things that we'd like to see happen is, it doesn't have to be every year,
Mhm.
but she's
Mhm.
elected annually, or someone is elected annually.
Okay.
Annually, so.
I think it's perfectly reasonable that the report that she's elected to put together is presented and explained. At least one of our citizens from Addison did a very eloquent job of pointing to chapter versus statute, identifying the roles and responsibilities of the treasurer. Antiquated though that may be in statute, it is what it is.
Yeah.
We hadn't seen any of that service, so.
I will make that request on behalf of the board.
Yeah, and I think I sent you an email on this, but I really would like to know, I think I'm not a lawyer, but, I took a look at what it says in this book, and I still can't figure out whether the high school is a supervisory union district or a part of the supervisory union district or part of a town district, because those are the three things that are defined in there. I think we're part of the supervisory union district. In that case, then I know what I need to do in the annual meeting. But if we're not, then, it's not well defined. There's no section in here that says union high schools are part of the town district or all the town districts that they represent. So, maybe Barb would know, since she's been doing that.
Yeah.
So I'd like to avoid what happened last year.
And last but not least, I wanted to let the board know that I received a retirement notification of a central office administrator. Dr. Carol Spencer will be retiring at the end of this year. It's very bittersweet for her. As you know, Dr. Spencer's been with us for many years, many years, and has really put a mark on curriculum, instruction, and assessment. We're going to miss her. I have started a search process. And if you're interested to know more about that, I certainly will keep the boards involved and understanding where we're at. We're starting with a review of the job description in my quest to make sure that everyone has an updated job description, and we have a hiring process well-defined and laid out with timelines.
What kind of license does that require?
That's a very good question. The state is working on requiring a certain license. Currently, there isn't one. People that get into that job have experience as building principals and or special ed director and or superintendent, and they fall into this work, or a licensed teacher. They fall into this work because of their interest in pedagogy and curriculum design and leadership. Dr. Spencer has a background as a middle school principal and as a classroom teacher, a teacher trainer, and a consultant to school districts around the state of Vermont. That is my report.
Okay, I guess probably on Wednesday, we'll talk about resignation and, okay. Any other comments or questions?
Kurt, just back to the annual meeting piece. In the past, sometimes we've made sure that we have a moderator who's planning to be there, and I know you just mentioned what happened last year and all those sorts of things, and so I didn't know if the board had thoughts about who might do that, or if there's someone we're going to ask to do that.
Well, what I was trying to find out is, in this book here,
Right.
whether a school board member can be a moderator. All it says is that a voting member of the district can be the moderator. So I'm assuming a school board member can be, until told differently. So we'll all be there, and we all vote, right? Everybody votes here?
Yep.
So, and we'll need a clerk, so you're the clerk.
Yeah, somehow I get to keep doing that every year.
Yeah.
So, I think I owe that to Neil, actually. I think
Me?
he's the one that nominates me every year.
Yeah, so if you'd like.
Always and only with your permission.
Yes.
Yeah, let's just say if you would not like to do that, please let me know before the meeting.
No, it's fine.
And so, for those of you who weren't there last year, we actually elected a moderator who was not a voting member of our district, so.
He did a good job, though.
You did a great job.
Yeah.
Very nice job.
So,
It's not, hey, let's talk about that.
You were very, very interested. But thanks. We'll try to get that to go a little bit more smoothly. Did you want to talk about the RFP?
Sure. So our food service contract is up at the end of this school year, and Tanya and I have been researching RFP processes, and we've decided to use what is on the Agency of Education's website. It's a well-defined process, and what I'd like to do is, I sent you an email today, but I'd like to go over the timelines for that. So we'd like to send out an RFP on or before February 23rd. We will notify that the response is due and the opening day will be April 8th. And then a presentation to the board for approval will happen on April 13th. So we're on a tight timeline. I understand from just doing a little bit of background that there are not many people who will likely send in a proposal. I have been told that the current organization that provides food services will likely send in a proposal. And Stephanie and I have just begun to talk about the level of satisfaction of the student body at this point, so we can get a little background information before you make some final decisions.
Any questions or comments on that?
This RFP language looks very complete.
It's very complete. It's, what, 40 pages, Neil?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is there a lot of work that your staff are gonna have to do to get this thing where it needs to be in
Yeah.
order to issue it?
That's right.
There is.
Yeah.
All right.
But it's you know, it's necessary. I think we
Right.
have to do a complete process, and we have to know the right questions and the right things to require. And just in my limited experience this year, we've learned some good questions to ask.
Oh, I'm absolutely not suggesting that we shouldn't do the work. I'm just
Yeah.
looking at the scope
It's
of
pretty-
the
yeah.
RFP itself.
Yeah,
A lot to it.
yes, a lot to it.
So it's gonna be a one-shot around, there's gonna be whatever you receive, and that's gonna be presented to us, and we don't get to dig into the proposals?
I don't see anything in policy, George, that gives the board that level of authority. Certainly, you can make a decision to do that, but that's something that usually lands on the desk of the superintendent in consultation with the building principal. I think the questions that are fair game to ask me is, you know, what's the qualification? What are the standards that you're looking for? Similar to when we went out to, when the board went out to look for an auditing firm. I helped the board structure that process, and you had some standards from which you were making your decisions. We will have a similar process for looking at the food service contract.
Any other questions or comments? Will you be speaking for the business manager tonight?
I will, thank you. Tanya had a family emergency. Her daughter is okay, but she had a bit of an accident that required her attention this evening, so she wanted me to apologize for her being here, for her not being here. So in the last couple of weeks, we sent out some information to the board, specifically the answers to the questions that a community member has been posing to the board, specifically around your previous audits and additional information. So we just filled that out as a question and answer document, and that will now be available as part of your minutes, and it will be on the posted on the website. So unless you have any further questions or want to have a discussion about where else that document needs to be, I just want to make a public statement that it's now been researched, it's complete, it's in the board's hands, and it will be on, available for the public on the website.
Questions?
So, thank you for that follow-up. There were several components that we received. One was a question and answer format. Another was a fund balance and deficit analysis. And I would just request, anytime something's issued, first, it's dated. Secondly, this should refer to the source of these figures, and I believe they are all per audit. It should specifically reference
that? Okay, otherwise this is just floating in space.
Right.
So it needs to be grounded with those two components. The other piece that we received, I believe all board members received, was a line item explanation of the FY14 budget, a variance analysis. Some folks are nodding their heads, some
Yes.
folks are
It was,
Yeah.
I'm looking for it, it's on
saying,
paper.
not sure. This is an important piece for us. So this provides by line item where the variances occurred in the FY14 budget. And this is in direct response to a request we made. So I appreciate getting those documents. And as well, Joanne, just as a matter of course, when this is issued, it should have a date on it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Absolutely.
Anything else? Questions or comments?
Just so you can see, that's my only copy.
So I just wanted to make sure that we did that. It was an actionable, not an actionable item, but an action that was requested in one of our previous meetings, so I wanted to close the loop.
Mr. Chair, I do have
Yep.
one question. There's a subhead on this report that says review of audit questions.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm wondering what that was
It
supposed to be.
was the document, it was one of the documents that we were just talking about.
Right.
Okay, so it wasn't okay.
It wasn't about-
questions about the audit
No.
itself,
No.
because we went, okay, thank you.
Just wanted to close the loop, so
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I'd make it public. So. Any other questions about that item? Or for the business manager, inaptism?
You know, I probably could mention this now. I was gonna wait till we went down to discussion items, but previously, the board has sent out a postcard to the community about your budget information night, and you've shared in the expense of that with the elementary school. So Glory did a little research, and we determined that the cost of the postcard would be about $439, should you wish to spend that from the board's budget. What do we say for postage, Gloria, another 200? So if it's a total of 639, the elementary school would maybe a third of that cost
We'll do it by equalized.
by students.
Mhm.
So I didn't know if that was something that the board felt was important to go out in that way.
Yeah, I would,
Go ahead. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think we've gotten some, I guess, flack or pressure for not having communicated in every possible way.
Okay.
And I think there are some folks who appreciate the mailing. Important that it goes out sufficiently timely, so that people get it with enough time to be able to
Well,
plan to
that's, I
attend.
mean, Gloria knows that if we send it to print,
They already have it at the printers, and I told them to hold off until after tonight,
Mhm.
and then it would be a go. You said it was okay.
so it would be able to go in the next couple of days,
He said it would be up by the end of this week.
by the end of this week.
just an anecdote, that's how we elected a out-of-district moderator last year. So I would check the addresses. I don't know if last year there,
They do it, the printers do it, they do it through the mail.
right, so it was done by zip code last year.
Mhm.
And you should realize that some of our zip codes
I've talked to
leak
them
into
about
other
that.
districts.
Hmm.
So we'd be inviting people from other districts to our annual meeting, so. You said it's all finished?
No, it's not finished. The postcard is ready, but it's at the
Yeah.
printers to be done.
So I wonder if we can we still add to it,
Add to
to the card?
Mhm.
Yeah, just add some kind of disclaimer that if you're not part of this school district, you're welcome to attend, but, you know,
It says it right on there who it's for, but
okay. If you could add that, that would be great. That would help us avoid that situation again.
So that is something that the board would like us to send out.
Yes.
Certainly,
And
yes.
will the postcard reference the availability of an annual report, how to receive it, and
Yes.
where to receive it?
Well, sorry. It references that it's online at anw.org or by calling the central office at 877. It can be picked up or mailed to your home.
Okay.
And copies are, and we also, actually, it'll be finished in the next, it hasn't been picked up yet, I guess it's been finished, but we will have annual reports in certain locations throughout the town clerk's offices. Yep. So that will happen as well.
Thank you.
So we tried last year to change it to opting in.
Uh-huh.
So if you want a report, that you opt in
I
to
see.
that report, rather
Okay.
than, mass mail it to every address.
Mhm.
We thought that it might be easier for people like me, where I'd rather have it electronically, so I
Mhm.
can access it anywhere, rather than have it on paper. But and I realize that there are people the exact opposite, they want it on paper.
You said 5 last year?
I
Yeah.
kept a list of who I had requested on this.
Yeah. So,
I was one.
So if you could think, if you wanted us to add to any, I don't know what else we would add, but it's
Yeah.
available in the town clerk's office, in
Yeah.
the central office, it's in,
yeah, that's fine.
electronically, by phone call.
Yeah.
So,
I just don't want to see 10,000 sent out.
no,
Yeah.
no. Thank you.
Any other questions? Business manager or?
Were the questions from the finance committee addressed?
The questions from last month's finance committee
bills.
were, pardon me?
The bill questions and so forth?
The one that I remember is on the cafe services. She wondered, they wondered why you did not get a detailed bill.
It was just a gross amount. It was for the month of February, and it was marked due when received, and it was received in January. We wondered why they were pre-billing us and not giving any sort of definition as to what it was.
So we have the detail. They actually do give us detail, and I believe that the payment schedule has been established as part of the contract.
Okay.
And, we can give you the detail that we received. We just haven't shown you that.
Okay.
But as far as I know, I asked Tanya this morning, have the questions to the finance committee been presented? And she said, yes, actually, most of the questions had to do with Stephanie last month. And they were not able to meet today because Lori's sick.
Right.
George couldn't come and Chris could not come. So.
I'm just
Thanks.
curious, did the other member of the committee show up? Interesting.
So I can forego the finance committee report. And where does that leave us with the next item, which is an actionable item?
We can't, the board cannot take action.
Right. So please let me know how that will be handled, whether we'll be taking action on 2 months, the next month?
Next
or-
month, so it'll be the beginning of March.
Okay. George, as the only committee member, do you feel comfortable with that, or? Oh, and Chris?
Yeah.
No, not really, but we can't meet unless it's warned. What do we have to have for a lead time on warning?
You can have a special meeting within 24 hours, and, yeah, you can have a special meeting within 24 hours.
Okay, then I would suggest that we should actually have our meeting and review those documents so that they can be taken care of by the district office, and then maybe the vote will have to occur at our next regular meeting.
Yeah, at least that won't mean that if you do have questions, they won't all be piled up.
Right.
Behind,
Right.
so.
So when you're aware of the fact that Lori is back on her feet, give us a call and we can, or have her contact us and we'll set up a meeting.
I have a suggestion, if this would be acceptable to the board, you could actually meet right before your informational meeting. That's the last week in February.
What's that, the 24th?
24th.
week is that?
That'll give you a week ahead at least. I realize it's a stretch, but, you know, may want to,
That's a-
rather than wait until.
Tuesday.
Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday.
The 24th is a Tuesday.
Wait a minute, it's a
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah, sorry. That whole week is all meshed together.
It's definitely a Tuesday.
Yeah.
9 plus 14 is 23 plus 1.
Are you comfortable with that?
The 24th?
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, we can do the 24th.
No, what I would I'm sorry if I confused you. I was suggesting that the board could meet before the
Oh.
annual before the informational meeting, but before that, if you could meet,
Mm-hmm.
you would be ready to recommend.
Okay.
You see what I
Yep,
mean?
Yep, I'm with you.
Joanne, do you need that?
You know, we have to pay bills.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, and they've been paid.
Yeah, but.
So, you know, if George would be more comfortable with the committee looking at those bills, that should happen.
Yeah, it can happen anytime.
I'm not, for my part, not as worried about the board taking action on their review between now and the 9th of March. I think,
Yeah.
you know,
And that's what I was suggesting, that the
Right.
committee get together and at least review what we cannot, approve tonight.
Then why don't you warn a meeting for the 24th in the afternoon at 3:30?
Okay.
And we'll
Gloria, have that?
endeavor to be there.
Okay. Well, I won't get there until 4, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
Did you want to do it at 4 instead of 3:30?
No, because Lori and I can get started. 4 o'clock doesn't give us enough time. It truly doesn't.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. Okay, on to actionable items. Would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of January 12th.
I will move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Got that? Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion?
I do have some discussion.
Okay.
I found them a little difficult to read,
Okay.
because of the watermark on the page. I was able to cipher them out, but they were a little difficult to read, and I think, a version that gets presented on the website should probably be cleaned up.
I'm sorry?
I think a version that gets presented on the website
The
should be cleaned
version.
up. Sorry, I
Thank you.
wasn't being loud enough.
I heard another
The-
word, and it
oh, yeah.
wasn't version.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it came out pretty bad.
Got it.
Excursion?
I don't know why mine didn't come out like that, because Jeff showed me his too, and mine's.
Yeah, it's odd, it's blocky, it's,
Yeah.
Huh.
Mine's kind of blurry. in
maybe
that
it's
way.
Gmail.
Yes?
So there was that, I had a couple of comments from what I could read. So under public communications, the second paragraph, I believe the point was, human services, not resources, are required of the schools. On page 3, under action items, again, maybe this is just the way it printed, but the word should be policy matters. I'm reading poly. Oh, okay. So that may just be the way it printed. And Neil, I'd actually ask you on the last page, under discussion items, I don't understand what's written there. NCAMN asked for the
Yes.
role of SU budget. I don't know what that means.
Right, I wanted to make sure that as we roll out our information about our budget in our fact sheets, that the role played by the district budget is clearly articulated to the voters, that they know that transportation, special education, and general operations are in there as
Okay.
distinct components.
If I may, at that legislative meeting this morning, there was discussion about the fact that the district budgets are not voted on by the voters, and that's becoming a concern throughout the state. And if we can go back to your first comment under public communication, it is human resources because Joanne mentioned that we need human resource managers now to deal with all of the employees and employee issues that are starting to grow. You recall that comment, Joanne?
I do, but I also remember talking about,
I meant services.
Oh, you meant services?
yes.
I think I said resources though, but I meant services. So I was talking
Yeah.
about kids and counseling and.
Yep. So that is a correct.
Anything else, Jeff?
That's what I could read. Yeah, page 2 is very difficult to read.
Yes, it was.
Okay. I think we can move on from there. Any other discussion? Motion on the floor, and it's been seconded that we approve the minutes of January 12th. Are you ready to vote?
Yes.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed or abstentions? Thank you very much. Just so everyone knows, we skipped the approval of bills and director's orders, if you're following along at home. Policy matters.
So Kurt, I did not come prepared with a scenario this evening because I was under the impression the board wanted to spend more time, should the public come and talk about the budget. So if you would like, I certainly can move on to setting capacity limit for school choice.
Okay, thank you.
So annually, the area high schools are supposed to set the total number of students in and out that you will allow in from other area high schools and out for our own students to go to other area high schools. And as far as I know, Glory, it's always been 10 in and 10 out for the duration of this agreement. Just to give you a little background information, currently we have accepted 10 students from area high schools and 7 of our students are going out. In the year 2013-14, we accepted 5 students in and 9 students going out. In the school year 12-13, we had 2 students come in and 5 going out. And then in 11-12, we had 5 in and 2 out. So I'm seeing a kind of a positive pattern of kids wanting to come to Vergennes, and maybe it's not one year is not a pattern. But in addition to those 10 students who have come in, we have 2 tuition-paying students on top of that. So your guidance for us tonight is to set that number and to give us some feedback on that. George?
A question, does that
Could I
have?
ask for a motion before we start discussing the actual item? If you don't mind.
I move that we open discussion on the item that we were just talking about.
Well, I'm looking more for
What
a
was you looking for?
motion that we would act on, like
Oh.
setting the limit.
Well, I move that we look into the in and out of the number of students and set the number for the next fiscal year.
At 10?
At 10.
Okay.
Thank you, it's coming there.
So there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks. So the motion is that we set the limit at 10 in and 10 out. And now, discussion. Thank you, George.
The question is, are we limited to having an equal number in and out?
No,
Then,
the law says, oh boy. So there is a formula that we're supposed to follow, and I believe limits the number of students allowed to transfer to other area schools to 5% or 10 students.
okay, I was more interested in the incoming,
And the same.
the same.
Yes.
So we can't go over the 10.
Can't go over the, Or 5%, I'm sorry.
5% would be
5%.
25.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
It's usually whichever is fewer.
But if we don't have to have the same, we
The
can,
answer is you do not have to have the same as long as
Okay.
you don't go over the requirement.
then it makes sense to me that we would say, okay, no more than 10 can leave, but we'll take all 25, because we got the capacity.
Money
Let-
doesn't
let-
follow them.
Hold on.
say, money don't follow.
No money.
No money passes,
Only the
George,
paid.
and I would ask the principal to answer the question about capacity, because remember, we just went through an exercise of
True.
class reduction.
True.
Yeah.
I understand that the first thought would be, oh, we can get more students coming in, more money.
Sure.
That doesn't go.
We'd be
It only-
educating them for
And that's why
free
Joanna
at
made it
considerable cost.
specifically acknowledge that we have two additional to the ones that chose to come here on the school choice. We have two that actually pay.
Mhm.
And that's why she pointed it, I mean, that's my understanding why you pointed out this separate two.
And that's because they
Okay.
missed the school choice deadline last year.
Right.
Okay.
That's the only reason that they still wanted to come here, and so.
So it would make most financial sense to let in as few as possible and let as many out. Right, I mean, wouldn't,
That's the confusing
Yes.
part about school choice.
I would respectfully disagree. I think we need to look to the future. And I think we should be actively seeking additional students to come to this school. And I understand that we just set class sizes based on what the enrollment figures were, but I don't believe, and I would look to you to say, that if we had another 10 students or 20 students, that we would have to add staff. We couldn't add those students to existing classes.
It's likely we would. I'm, especially in some of our, the ninth grade English, bio, or science, we are 24, 26 kids in some of those classes right now. I can't,
Mhm.
I don't have a lot of flexibility in the schedule.
Mhm.
I might have to add sections, and in which case I would incur costs in the budget, and I would have to make up for it through supplies or other equipment, some of those other expenditures. It's gonna be tight right now. It all depends on what they need
Mhm.
and what courses they take.
Let me explain why I'm suggesting
Okay.
that that would be a good idea. If we know, based on the census of students in this district, that over the next 3 years, I believe it's 38 students, we will graduate 38 more than current classes coming up. I believe it's prudent to be looking to attract students to our school. And I say that mindful that today money doesn't follow the student, but that can and may in fact change. Isn't there a limit by law on that? Aren't we planning for money following students?
We are not planning for money following students.
That's not in law
That is
currently?
not in
No.
law, and furthermore, what adds to the situation is the dual enrollment that was supposed to be also funded by the governor is not being funded. We are now expecting to have to pay for what we have not had to pay in terms of dual enrollment.
So it was of the same impression as you, Jeff. Based on a very vivid memory of having been told by our prior superintendent that the money would begin to follow the students after a period of 3 years or something like that.
Nope.
Well,
Okay? I am now corrected.
And it was being discussed in the legislature. So, the reason that some of us remember that is because we thought it would be something that would continue to be discussed, and it isn't.
I believe that it might even currently be being discussed by a state representative from the South Burlington area, because South Burlington has had to limit the number of choice kids coming in.
Yeah.
Because they can't, it's an affordability piece.
but we heard from Representative Sharp today what his bill is, and it does not cover
School choice.
that at all.
No, does not.
I would say school choice is a good thing. There are some students who, for a variety of reasons, find themselves needing another setting, and it's great to have that option. We can let a student in, we can let a student out, and it meets their needs. But I think 10 seems to be about a good amount.
It is a good
Yeah.
amount. We're
What's the
psyched about
deadline?
that. The deadline, we have to let kids know by March 1st, or they need to, their application needs to be in the
We're
superintendent.
already collecting applications, but the other districts have sent emails about notification.
And George, the deadline is now. The board needs to set
Oh,
capacity.
no, don't get me wrong.
Okay.
I just wanted to know if there is still an opportunity to receive more applications. And to Jeff's point, I think that if because you now have 10, so that means we're topped out against the ceiling. To your point, let's go up 2 or 3.
Excuse me. You have, that's for the current year. We have 3 students who are graduating.
Okay?
So that gives you a net difference of
Gives us 3.
3.
But that, now, correct me if I'm not following along on this, but you have not, through your budgetary check-in and class size that we've discussed previously, you've not factored in an increase of 12 to 15 letting in. You factored in, you're figuring on 10. Were you figuring roughly on 10?
We're actually not. We're factoring on the enrollments, the students that are enrolled
Okay.
for
So
next
we're-
classes, they've done enrollment. So, 3 is not gonna.
3 is not gonna do it, but
change things.
if we increase it like George and Jeff is talking about it, I mean, the 3 additional that goes up to what we have 10 again, isn't gonna factor, but if we increase it and just, if for whatever reason, we get another 5.
It
And
very
those
well might. I
5
mean,
are ninth
we're
graders.
tight. We're tight. In some areas, we
know,
have room,
because
but
of what
in
you're
some
saying.
areas, we're tight.
8th or 9th graders.
We will also have students moving in and out.
Right,
Yeah.
I understand,
Yes.
and that's a
Yeah.
variable that you can't,
There's-
We can't control that, so
Right.
as you're talking about 3 right now, I mean, potentially that's not a big.
no, I'm not, I see where they're going at it, and I fully understand and fully appreciate that, and actually encourage the more the merrier. I think we have a great establishment here, and should share it to many kids that want to have that opportunity. But we also have to factor in what we can afford and what we can give the students, so everybody still has the same quality that we're trying to give. And you're right, 3 isn't a big number, but I see more than 3 over here. We're talking 25, we're talking 5% we're talking. I mean, that's I'm not saying that we would get 25, because who knows? We don't know how many people are moving out, like you said. But I think we have visions of grandeur that we need to tone in because of the financial restrictions that we are currently under.
Yeah. Joanne, do you have information on the waiting list? And I'm not familiar, but every school keeps a waiting list as
Right.
well, so I
No.
don't know what that is. I don't believe it's very high. So we've been able to accommodate those that want to come in.
What Stephanie means by that is that the students have to.
We've never had a waiting list.
They've
so-
had to identify their
Yeah.
first, second, and third choice.
So there isn't a waiting list, which means the 10 is sufficient for those that want to come here, and has been.
So the genesis of my question is a high degree of confidence in the quality of the program here and an assumption that we could compete well. It sounds like we don't have the structure broadly statewide that would allow us to compete for students, and that the downside of opening the door further is that we could potentially be in a position where post-adoption of a budget, we could be looking at the need for more staff. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And we live that, we walk that line anyway. But if people move in after.
Right.
But it seems to work 10 and 10. There's a motion on the floor to that effect. Are there any more discussion or amendments?
I just have a quick question before you call the vote. Is there any general theme as to what's pulling the 10 kids in? Is it a whole grab bag of issues, or, I know the 2 tuition.
Sports is one, academics is another, the personalization is another. Let me just look at the kids from this list.
There's a few, a couple Walden students on there. A couple staff members who, their students have chosen to go here.
Oh.
But they live out of this,
Mhm.
staff members live out of district.
Any other questions, comments? Are you ready to vote?
Yeah.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Or abstentions? Thank you very much. What's that?
All set, thank you.
You
Okay.
Skip the line,
Personnel.
personnel.
No, we
No, we're
decided to
just getting
skip
to
it.
Yeah.
We decided to skip it.
Okay.
There was no personnel concerns. But I'll make that more obvious next time. So the discussion items for tonight, we kind of asked people to be here around 7:45. So I'd hate to move on to something else. But I guess we could start discussing it, or,
Could we take a brief recess,
of course.
just in light of weather and
Sure.
give folks a chance? to
Sure.
show up?
You have no problem with that? How long are
Need
you?
a motion?
No, don't need a motion. What are you suggesting?
Maybe 5 minutes?
Okay.
See if we get folks to show up.
Would you like to see the classrooms that were damaged by the storm?
That would be cool.
That'd be good, yeah.
Okay.
Field trip?
I will remain here in case anyone does show up and be their greeter. Welcome. After a slight delay, we're going to move on to the discussion items of the fiscal year 16 budget. I noticed that some other people came in. If you could sign in, that would be great at some point. And there is documents available to you if you'd like them. We are going to talk about the fiscal year 16 budget. So at the end of the presentation, I'll ask for any comments or questions. And then we can have a discussion. So, is there a presentation or?
No, there is no
Okay.
presentation. I have a couple of additional pieces for the board. Through some feedback from some board members, we were able to complete the FAQ, and Gloria will be putting that on the website tomorrow.
Okay, great.
Jeff and Neil and I had a meeting, and Kate Martin had a meeting with Vergennes town officials. Was it this week?
Yeah.
I think it was last Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
Sorry,
the-
what's today? It's Monday. It couldn't be this week. And that was Mayor
Was-
Benton as well as Mel Hawley, and they gave us some really, really, I think, very critical feedback. So I thought that went well.
Yeah.
Stephanie and Jay and I have a list of organizations and community groups that we're meeting with. We tried to meet with the Rotary last week as well. Unfortunately, that meeting was canceled, and I hope you got my message, George. I can't go Tuesday.
Yes, I did, I'm sorry.
But Jeff and
I
Stephanie will be
spoke with
there.
Jeff, and,
Yeah.
yep.
So I think they're all set. I'm going to the Panton Select Board meeting tomorrow night, and, just really open to anything else the board feels would be important in terms of visibility and getting information out there.
Okay. So we have in front of us a proposed budget for the 2015-2016 fiscal year. Are there any questions or comments about it?
Everybody has it over there.
For those of you who are new to our meetings, we proposed this budget, so we took action on the proposed budget last meeting. So this is the budget that will go for in front of the voters. There is also a document that explains how the budget is put together and what some things that have changed and how they have changed, and that becomes available. It'll become available this week on the the high school website. And so we put this on the agenda in case anyone wanted to talk about it.
So one thing that I'd just like to offer before opening up to folks who want to ask questions. I really appreciate the presentation of the actuals from prior years on this. That paints a completely different picture of what we are asking the voters for relative to what it costs to run the facility and run the educational program. And I will keep my editorial comments about prior years to myself.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Or-
So, with respect to this schedule, I would, once again ask, that we have a variance column, that makes it evident what the proposed change is. And I realize that Tanya is still getting up to speed, but I believe it would be prudent and most useful if there were a forecasted FY15 column in between FY15 budget and FY16 budget to indicate what this year's forecasted actual will be.
We have talked about that, Jeff, and believe me, we are working on it. I just don't know that I'm going to have something ready to give voters enough time to really dissect it. It is an important piece, and I had mentioned we will get an expenditure report in the month of March, and we're trying to speed that up. I just don't know if I'm gonna be able to get a complete picture before town meeting day. We will try. We're working on it.
Understood.
We have variances by category, so presented in this report now.
We have
By
percentage variances.
Between the proposed budget and
Yeah.
Last year's.
Yeah.
last year's proposed budget
Yeah.
and this year's.
And then just, having just received it this evening with the line items, as you'll recall, at our last meeting, we approved a gross dollar amount without the line item detail. And the one piece that does catch my eye is on the last page, and it looks as though you've elected on the hot lunch transfer to liquidate that deficit in 3 years. And it was a specific point of discussion at the last meeting to suggest, it's your call, that could be done over a longer period of time.
Yes, I understand that.
So are you going to follow on with a question?
Nope, those are my comments.
Do you have one, George? I was just curious why.
Because the amount of money to spread it out a longer length of time really would not gain us very much at all.
Okay.
Because we felt that the program budget that we brought forth to the board, we could defend.
Okay. Thank you. Don't get me wrong, I'm for retiring these things as fast as we can, but there was the discussion.
So actually, further to that point, then, would we see on this presentation the liquidation of the FY14 deficit?
I would need to call my connection on the telephone. I think I know the answer, but I want to be absolutely accurate.
So you mean the $542,000 from last year that was retired?
No.
Okay.
$768,000.
So there should be about $230,000 within this associated with amortizing the FY14 deficit, and it's not jumping out at me.
Right.
Isn't that on the revenue side?
It would be, right?
It would be.
And the revenue side's not presented here.
No, it seems that we thought this was what the board wanted. No, I did not bring that. You have the revenue side. We have distributed that before, but I did not bring that with me tonight. Would you like me to get Tanya on the phone to answer that question?
I think if we're confirmed that it would be on the revenue side, that's the answer to the
Yeah.
question.
Okay, any questions from the public?
I'll go then.
Okay.
My question pertains to the music department. I see you've made a .33 reduction. And I've heard rumors about which classes are being, cut, but I would like some specific answers from you guys. And I don't know if that's been finalized, but I want to know which classes or courses specifically are on the table.
So, we were under-enrolled in a number of classes. We had 3 sections of 3 specific classes that only had 5 students total enrolled in them. So those were 3 sections of a teacher that we really don't need. There is seniority involved. I'm uncomfortable talking about personnel here, but there is a seniority issue involved. So the least senior teacher in that department is the one that will likely be reduced, but none of those reductions are set in stone yet. This was a proposal designed to meet the class size policy, Malcolm. I know that's unsatisfying, but.
Well, I understand.
So, perhaps I can be a little, not more clear, because you were very clear, but maybe fill in what you haven't heard in the last couple of meetings. What we do as a board is we ask the administration to follow some guidance. And we gave them some guidance in the past 2 months. Then after that, if that guidance can be met, a proposed budget and some actions that could be taken in order to meet that proposed budget. And in the past couple of meetings, if you look at the minutes or at the video, you'll see what we are considering. But one of the things about budgets and public education is it's hard to predict, one, what's going to happen in the future logistically, from students moving into the area or teachers deciding to leave or retire here, or a need in the school that we didn't anticipate. So the hardest thing for this board member is that we don't find out until after the budget is approved what revenues we'll receive in order to meet that budget. And so you're kind of shooting in the dark in that case. And there's nothing we can do about that. So those are the variabilities. That's why, we say we think this will happen, but it doesn't always come to fruition. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's a timing thing. Hi, Christina. Go ahead. Yeah.
So if the budget does pass, I'm related to sort of what Malcolm just said, is there a timeframe you're going to make those decisions on the exact cuts?
I've rushed the scheduling process. The school counselors, the department is trying to actually now schedule people into those classes, so I know better. We already have some changes in my proposed figures, but I think I can accommodate that and meet the budget, the target. But yeah, none of this is, these are proposed reductions based on very, very preliminary enrollment figures. Once the budget passes, at least I know what number I can shoot for. Okay. And then at about the same time, we'll have the scheduling done.
Yeah. So are we talking like April or
Well,
before
we
the
actually,
school
we
year
have a
is out?
master agreement deadline
Right.
in April
Yeah.
to notify teachers.
Okay.
So we'll be aware
So
of that as
certainly
well.
by April.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Do you know what a master agreement is?
vaguely.
Yeah, it's our agreement with the teachers that will do certain things in support of their employment and support of our goals. So that's why certain dates have to be met, and decisions are made based on those dates. Cool. Thanks for coming, by the way. Nice that you're interested. Any other questions?
Got one question.
Yep.
I'm curious why for fiscal year 15 and 16 you propose why special ed is all zeros. Is that being funded from something else?
Yeah, so the entire special education budget goes over to the Addison Northwest Supervisory Union, the supervisory district. That was state law that required all those services to be consolidated for all the schools. So you would see that in the elementary school as well. And then what you will ultimately see in all the budget fact sheets and everything is there's three components to that district budget: special ed, transportation, and the operations part of things. So it's all in there.
And preschool.
Thank you.
So, my question.
Actually, just to go a little further, so if you turn to page 8, down at the bottom,
you will see district services, Addison Northwest Supervisory Union. So if you look at the earlier years, you'll see that those were under special ed, those are zeros, and now it's moved. And that's the assessment that's coming to the high school for the overall special education budget that's now spread over the 3 elementary schools plus the high school. The policy reason to have done that was to protect individual schools against spikes. So the cost of special ed is now spread over the 1,000 students in the supervisory union rather than within each school.
So thanks. I was just starting to say that if you were asked to describe to a general member of the public who hasn't been to any of the meetings what this budget represents and how the school is prepared to still meet most of the, or to offer most of the things that draw students to the school, what would that sound like? Because I think this is really hard, and from what I've read in the paper, I think it's hard for most people to kind of digest it. And one of my intents for having more discussion time was that people could understand it better. I think for a family like ours, which, I really appreciated Jeff's time in talking it through, is the concern that it will become harder and harder for kids to have the classes when they need them in order to basically line up that education so they'll be well prepared without necessarily having to geographically go to another school to gain that for part of the day. And I think what really is challenging is for technology to be coordinated smoothly so that everybody knows what's accessible and when. So I just wanted to put that out there.
I'm going to give this to you, Stephanie. Hi. So before you walked in, the board was discussing our school choice agreements. And what we've noticed over the years is that more students are wanting to come to Vergennes Union High School, and I think that that's a really good sign. There are a lot of great things going on here. I know you know that, but we made sure in this budget that we were right-sizing the classes without compromising the options for kids. Yes, we may need to do a better job at planning. So if we have low enrollment, we're not pulling that course off the list. We're offering the course at another time. We're going to try to do some longer range planning with students, recognizing that things do change from year to year.
And we're gonna monitor and keep stead with where our kids are going on to college. That's one of the indicators for us, not the whole thing, but one of the indicators that, that kids are being really successful here. I want Stephanie to talk a little bit more about the details, but we believe in running a full-service high school as much as we possibly can. And we need to do that by partnering with our other high schools, as well as trying to be innovative and creative, whether it be working with online courses to expand kids' opportunities, or bringing in other resources. But we want you to know we're committed to that. And we do not want to see the quality suffer at Vergennes Union High School, and I don't believe in this proposed budget that it does.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that, except that we worked very hard to reduce where we could in staffing, to align the staff with the number of students we've lost over the years, but not cut any programs. And I don't believe we've cut any programs. We've preserved all the higher level classes. We've preserved our flexible pathways, Walden, CBL. Those options are all still present, and we're looking to expand them. I believe we can do that, even with this budget and even with what I already said about tightly scheduled classes right now. We have wiggle room, but there are some popular classes, and I think we can enlarge the sizes. We've had a luxury of, enjoying classes of 10 or 12 students in them at times, and I think we can expand them and still meet students' needs. But I guess what I would say also is this budget represents what it truly costs to run this school. And for a number of years, those numbers didn't really align. They, for whatever reason, they were under budgeted, didn't reflect, what the fuel costs really were over time, or what the substitute costs were over time, or what the teacher tuition reimbursement figure, which is contractually obligated, was over time. So we've made an effort to accurately reflect those. Because it's the only way I know to bring this budget in under the amount is to make sure that what we actually need to spend is reflected here.
So do you imagine that there will be communication tools to help the public see that a little bit more clearly? And I'm not saying that these meetings don't help, but when I go onto the website, it would be so helpful if there is a one page of what does the budget mean? What does a proposed budget mean?
Yeah, that's what I was.
There is an FAQ being developed and should be posted.
But it might be, if there isn't vision in there, it might be good to include it, because I think an FAQ sends something different. I mean, it can, meaning it can be kind of the answers versus the vision for where the school is heading.
So I've asked Stephanie to create a letter to the editor for the Addison Independent to answer those very specific questions, because they have come up on a number of occasions. And one thing we do not want to communicate to anyone, and that is that programs are going to suffer here given this proposed budget. Are we on the brink? Yeah, we're on the brink. We're still protecting, we're there, and feel confident moving into next year that our kids are going to be getting a great opportunity here. But asking people to go searching on the website is probably not the best thing to do always. So through some communication directly with the media, we feel that we can hit that target. And if you have any other suggestions, I'm more than happy to come and meet with parent groups, whether it be, in homes with coffee or having people come to the central office. I'm more than happy to do that outreach. So if you or any of the parents that you know feel that that would be important, please don't hesitate to contact me.
So, Christina, before you go, I'd like to just comment on some of the things that are happening. There, as much as we're trying to preserve the program and the quality of the program, it is irritating to not be able to take the classes that you want to when you want to. I hear it all the time, not all the time, but I listen some of the time. To that irritation, but that's a fact of population. Larger schools offer different options because they have a larger population. That wasn't the intent of the laws that govern education in the state. But it's the effect. It's what's happened. if you have a chance, if you want to see what's happening in the entire state, not just here, a lot of what the secretary has published is really clarifying. You know, as much as we have concerns here, that there are a large part of the state that have really serious problems, and they can't provide they can't provide equity in education, even though they're required by law to, without spending $20,000 a student, without you know, spending a lot of money. And so they take that risk and try to budget it. The other thing that I try to explain to the community members is, you know, the property tax that you pay here doesn't just pay for this school. It goes to the state. So you should know that you know, the contributions, the financial contributions that you're making aren't just contributing to this school or to this school supervisory union or school district. And that's an important thing to remember. So I don't know if that helps or not, but those are the things that I think about when I look at budgets. You know, how it's affecting the student population, as well as the educational community and the community at large.
I think there's a lot of recognition around the challenges that the state has in education, and I think the media has covered that quite a lot, at least parts of the media. But I think in terms of our local media, it has not covered necessarily the strengths as much as it could. You know, sports does get covered, but not necessarily the other academic offerings.
Can I just take that opportunity to thank you for your part in that excellent front page article that showed up in last week's Addison Independent?
Humanities?
Yes,
Yeah. Humanities
fantastic.
course.
Sorry, just,
But I just do encourage that, that in terms of, yes, there's problems in other parts of the state too, but as families try to decide what is next, that a budget like this, I think just is so easily at first glance looks like more is asked, but there's less being offered. And I think that's, again, can be hard to understand. And then secondly is, think the part about transportation, if there is a regional approach, an asset approach for what education looks like in our area, technology and transportation, and how well would that be worked out and in what time frame, will be very helpful, I think, for people making decisions.
Did you have anything else?
I just wanted to ask, in communicating about, you know, the nuts and bolts of the budget so people can explain it or understand it, would you also be able to point out, if this budget doesn't pass, what it's going to mean to the school? Because I think if more of the public understands that too, they can see this is what this represents. If this budget doesn't pass, this is where we will be cutting programming, we will be doing X, Y, and Z.
We've tried to communicate that through the budget building process, Christina, and, you know, while that discussion may have some value, we don't want to shock and awe. We don't want to threaten people. We want people to get around, you know, the budget as we proposed it, and yes, there will be cuts, and it will likely go into the areas that we don't want it to go into.
Yeah. I'm just not sure how well people understand what that means. I'm not suggesting you threaten people with, you know, you need to pass this budget, but I also don't think that you don't get the full picture of what it could mean if you don't talk about it.
What kinds of ideas do you have in being?
You know, Stephanie mentioned a letter to the editor. I'm not sure how you communicate that effectively, but I do think it's important for people to understand especially younger families, because it's going to impact them the most.
So one of the things we tried to make part of this is the meeting minutes from January, is what would happen.
Well, I did see that.
Yeah. So $1 million, reduce the tax rate by 13 cents. We would need to consider reducing extracurricular activities, AKA school clubs and sports. We'd have to consider reducing the school administration to one principal model and reductions in the office support staff. We'd have to reduce the budgets for technical equipment and support. These are all considerations. Eliminate a world language. Eliminate programs that allow for individualized and personalized learning. And eliminate the instructional and department leadership model. You know, something that we've been studied for, you know, by other educational organizations. So that's, I think, as best we can provide, you know, people an idea of what would happen.
Well, that's there if only people go to the website and they search for it and that create, you know, like, is there a better way to get that information somewhere else?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got the e-news, we can communicate to the school community, but the general public, that's not part of the schools.
Well, the problem with that, I see communicating that to the general public and in the paper or something like that, is being a two-dimensional communication. You're gonna get a lot of people, that's a threat. They're threatening my boys' basketball team, or they're threatening this, vice versa. I think.
It's a fact, it's not a threat.
Well, I understand that, but I'm just speaking from where, you know, where I was a year and a half ago before I became a board member. Also, a year and a half ago, or a year before I became a board member, my biggest concern, or my big question was how could these deficits happening? Why are they happening? Well, through being a board member and being part of the process, the big eye-opener for me this past year was the fact of how many items weren't budgeted or were wickedly budgeted under, knowing that we weren't budgeting. So when we come to finally having a $700,000 deficit, I mean, and you know, this is what I hear from people down my street or on my phone a couple nights a week, is who's to blame? Well, the blame isn't the problem. It's done. We need to fix it, and we need to fix it with the least amount of pain, and go from there, if possible. And I think through the hard work of the administration, they've done that. But my concern is, I agree with you. I mean, communication is not my forte by far. But I just fear, as speaking from someone, you know, a year ago, if I read in the paper that, well, if you don't pass this budget, this is where we're going. Because I lived this when I was a kid back in New York, the same ideas, you know, and that was communicated to the paper. And being in the rural New York where I was, that got a lot of dander up and a lot of people upset because, you know, these are things that it's not just sports, we're language. I mean, these are things that sets our sports program, our language programs, our technology, the new individual learning aspect. These are things that are setting Vergennes apart from the rest of the state. And yes, the rest, as we all know, the state is having the problem. And, you know, the big thing is when I get phone calls at home and I ask, you know, or tell them that, you know, the money that you paid don't come to us. It goes to the state. We get a share back, and then the rest of it goes out to other districts who can't come up with the money. I mean, is it 2%? 2 cents? 2 cents this year is state money. Doesn't even come back here. So when you get your bill in thing, I mean, that was an eye-opener 2 months ago when I heard that here. It also comes down to, I mean, communication is key, and about everything in life. But it also comes, you only can, you know, I don't mean to be blatant, but you only can bring a horse to the water. You can't force it to drink. And I understand the weather and everything else, but I mean, the meeting's posted. people can come, people do, there's many other medias out there. I mean, as Neil will testify, Front Porch Forum can fire up at moments, and, I mean, you know, rightfully or wrongfully. I mean, the media's out there. I mean, I'm not saying let's not do stuff like that. I mean, let's get the communication out. I'm just worried that it can be, without properly figuring out how to communicate, it can be deceived and can be a big negative to what we want to do.
Maybe we can have that document at the open house.
Absolutely.
It'll be live tomorrow, and at that point, it can go out on things like Front Porch Forum and so forth.
And it will. You know, we try to reach out, so.
And apologies, it's not ready tonight, but actually, we've been kind of working on it, and the work that we did with the city, with Mel and
Bill Benton was really very eye-opening and useful. Mel had some very useful ideas for how to, you know, be a little bit more clear about the communication, so.
Does it speak to the planning parts? I think that is really important in terms of, while I agree there's no real value in going back and blaming, but how can the public feel like part of that planning, or the transparency in the planning perhaps? If that's made up front, then maybe that can help to answer some concerns even before they really get fired up.
What do you mean by planning?
Well, obviously, so if things weren't planned accurately in the past for capturing what expenses were going to be. I think control, but also the planning that goes, I mean, you two referenced it, the planning process that feeds into a good sound budget that then when it comes up to voting time, people feel like, oh yeah, I'd already heard about that. I'd already knew that was going to be part of.
So there's a few pieces, if I can.
Please, this is your meeting.
You know, we'll see. I shall. As Joanne and Stephanie said, you know, we use the class size policy to determine the numbers of students per numbers of teachers, and we use that as our guiding principle. So that's one piece of planning that will continue to occur over time. I mean, the decline in enrollments, which is something we talked about last year, is very real. And, you know, we see numbers like in the tens of students leaving, or not leaving, but as students graduate, other students aren't coming back in to, you know, fill in behind. 38 are graduating this year? No, more than 38, sorry. Our projected enrollment reduction will be 38, is that the number?
I think it's about 22.
Okay, well, and again, you never know. As Kurt said, you never know. So that's one piece of planning that we do. The second piece has to do with looking at the special education and the size of the special education budget, which seems to be ratcheting up over time. That has a lot to do with the needs of the kids that are in the district, which can also vary over time. We can flatten that out by going around, by putting that budget, you know, within the district and smoothing it across all the schools, and that's one thing. We're also planning to get to hire a consultant that will allow us to identify efficiencies in there. I think that the money spent to hire the consultant will net a significant reduction in cost. That's.
We're going to actually use a federal grant to support that process.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Even better.
Yeah.
That's good.
That sounds better.
Yes.
So, and then beginning to think about things like sourcing our fuel costs across all the schools at once, as opposed, or at the district level, as opposed to building by building, or mowing, or plowing, or things like this, which are much lower, not lower hanging fruit, but, you know, smaller amounts of money, but all of which add up. So all those types of planning are occurring, in addition actually to building maintenance. So those are, you know, those are the types of things that we're getting very careful about looking at, budgeting for, in addition to budget controls.
Can I also add to that? I know that when Mel was here, and he said, like, for the city, they would plan their budget, and they would decide 2 days before the next year starts what they're gonna do. We decide 6 months or more in advance, so there's a lot more time for there to be variations, changes in that period of time before we even start that budget. that's gonna change cost and things. We don't get to decide at the last minute and go, oh, next year, you know, okay, it's 3 days from now, we're gonna decide to make our budget kind of match up where we're at that moment. So there's a lot of variation there that makes making that decision so far in advance hard.
It's
Are there any
20
other pieces that I missed that you want to bring up?
In terms of planning,
Yeah.
yes, actually. As much as we want to do this now, the board is planning on going through some exercises of visioning. So working as a K-12 system to ask parents, as we're preparing your kids for the future, what does that look like? What's important to you? And bringing the community's ideas back in the development of that vision, because many of the high-quality school districts are aligning all of the resources to that vision. We don't have one. We have individual mission statements in our schools, but we don't have an overarching systems vision. And that is the piece that's going to tie everything together. And so when you hear the board talk about decision-making, they will be referencing how this budgetary item is going to support the direction that we've established as our vision. And that's how community members and parents can get involved. Because boards will be asking you what you think is important. Preparing our kids as a citizen, preparing our kids for a global world, where for doing that, you know, we have to take experiences really seriously. Like, yes, learning a world language, but doing some traveling to practice those world languages. You know, reaching out to our partners across the border, you know, would be like on an easier scale, but we've already begun to develop some of those other opportunities, bringing guest teachers in from different world cultures. So there's a lot that we can do with not so much money, but doing things in a different way. But the boards really need to establish that vision for us to be able to align a strategic plan to get there.
And that's, it's not really planning, but we're talking with our faculty about becoming more flexible in what they teach, encouraging double endorsements, so math and science, or English and social studies, or social studies and math, whatever that is, because you know, it's very difficult to move, to reduce a 0.25 or something of a teacher. But if a teacher can fill in and teach social studies, but teach one section of English, they maintain a full-time position, but it allows us that flexibility of increasing a section where we need to do that. So talking about middle school endorsement, so high school teachers getting middle school endorsement, so we have some flexibility across the grades as well, and doing that. I looked up the numbers see, I have two sets. I have the high school and then the whole school. We're down about 26 between the senior class and the 7th grade next year. But at the high school level, which is where most of our enrollment issues are you know, keeping me awake at night, we're holding firm at about 8. We're going to drop down about between 6 and 8 students. So that's sort of a holding year, and then we drop down again the following year. So.
I wanted to add to what Stephanie was saying about different certifications. We're preparing our kids for a very different future, and the jobs that they're going to have are not going to be specific to a content area. They're going to have knowledge of a lot of different areas. And so I think you know, integrating the curriculums in that way is just also a better way to prepare them for post-secondary or training programs that will require them to be pulling from different disciplines in terms of their own knowledge and skills and dispositions.
And at the same time that we're reducing staff to align with enrollment, we recognize we really do have to do some spending to maintain the facility, but also to purchase technology. So that's been held and put on hold for too many years, and it's impacting the way we educate our students now. So that's in the plan. As difficult as it is, it has to be done.
So if I could just add one thing, sorry, and then I'll stop. What you're hearing here is the stuff that I get really excited about. You know, Joanne, Stephanie, Jay have educational vision for this building, and we just need to get past sort of the annual budget fight and get into a proactive mode where we can, you know, we can start talking about vision and we can start making cool things happen. And
That'll happen under these guys' leadership.
Oh, that's very clear. I don't think it's clear outside yet. I mean, it's still early in the process.
It really is, and I started my job July 1.
Yeah.
I had a couple more things to deal with. So those, but the things I've been dealing with are critical. And the things I want to be able to do, because I see myself as an educational leader. I'm not just a manager. I have to do all the management stuff. But the things I really love to do is, be in classrooms with kids, looking at what's going on with instruction. Really think about ways in which we can give our kids expanded opportunities in creative ways. I mean, that's the stuff that gets me really jazzed up. And if we can get through this little blip, that's going to jazz me up too, because it's going to free all of us up to be able to move into the visioning and aligning our resources and being intentional and, and look at creative ways to expand our opportunities for kids.
If you look at a historical, timeline of the finances of Vergennes Union High School, there's lots of positive things in the past too. So, there's positive things to look forward to, and there's things to look back to and learn from. We talk a lot about deficits in these meetings, but in the past 10 years, there have been surpluses. So, and those surpluses have been applied to tax rates. So if you keep things in perspective, I was telling this to George and Jeff in an email last night, we'll get to a point where we can start looking at the value of education rather than the cost of education. So, and we have been there before. So, it's a necessary process that we're following. But, I wonder if we are teaching the right things, every day. It's, if my daughter has a job like I do, I work for a company that has 400,000 employees, and none of them are in Vermont. I don't work with anybody in Vermont. But I live here because I love it. So, what kind of skills I wasn't taught how to do what I do now in high school, but I was taught how to solve problems, how to express myself, and a lot about mathematics. So those are the strengths that I have. So hopefully we can generate that kind of individual or group of individuals, and that they'll, have those opportunities in the future. Make sense?
Yeah, it does. If you could just capture a few things of what you said, maybe it's already in the document that's going to come out tomorrow. If it's not, I would just highly suggest putting another one together that just really starts on that vision. And I know there's a lot to appreciate about the past, but there's so many of us who are just right in the present.
Yeah.
And it's a budget, it's a family household budget decision that often people are making. And so the more that we can hear of what you've been speaking to tonight, I think will really help.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
There's nothing else on the agenda this evening. I'd like to remind people of the meetings that are coming up. Probably most close to tonight is the meeting on Wednesday for the supervisory union. And there are other meetings in the minutes. I'm not going to list them all. But if you do feel inspired by something that you read or something that you talk to people about, try to positively reinforce that and influence your neighbors. That's what we try to do. So I think you'll find that positive energy works a lot better than negative energy. So, anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. We're going to adjourn.